Gay Paree. Okay, Gay Paree it is.
Yes. Gay Paree. For everybody.
I cannot. I don't know. This was a mistake. All right.
When I look out my window, many sights to see. When I look in my window, so many different people to be, that it's strange, so strange. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. Must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch. Oh, must be the season of the witch.
Welcome back, everybody, to the resurgence of the Renaissance, of the rebirth of Dramatis Sermo. This audio show that we used to do primarily, we used to review literature, well, literature in quotation marks. This show really started off as a fanfiction reviewing show. At the time, it seemed like a good idea. Much like Gay Purr-ee, I'm sure it sounded like a great idea in 1962.
Actually, it must be older, considering that, you know, it was in production for a while.
Yes, but it came out in 1962. I don't doubt that it was in production for a while. After all, this film is a UPA production.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, UPA is very particular with its stylistic choices, as much as it is very particular with its budget. Which is to say, it doesn't have a very spectacular budget to begin with.
Yeah.
And it made even less, apparently. Sadly.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We should really start by talking about this film, or, you know, segueing into it somehow.
Yes. So, as we already established in a very roundabout way, Gay Paree, see if you can spot the pun there, is a 1962 American animated musical film produced by United Productions of America, as in UPA, and released by Warner Bros.
Yep.
It features the voice of Judy Garland as the protagonist. Judy Garland, of course, is a woman, a talent, a special someone that does not need an introduction, mostly because everybody and their kids has seen The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Everybody knows a Dorothy.
Everybody knows that potent, powerful voice of Miss Garland, and it is in full display in this film as well. We also have Robert Goulet, which
plays John Tom, right?
Yes, he plays Jean Tom! Jean Tom! Jean Tom!
John Tom!
Jean Tom! Yes, it's a name that's impossible to forget, especially since it is yelled at us several times during the film.
Yeah, and to think it in actual English translation, it actually means yellow cat.
Yes, I know, it's a tomcat, and it's yellow, so Jean Tom! Jean Tom! Jean Tom! Anyway, Jean Tom is voiced by Robert Goulet. In his first feature film, I do believe Robert Goulet is mostly a lounge singer.
Oh, then again, I didn't research into him much.
Well, why would you need to research Robert Goulet when you have Judy Garland? I mean, who cares about anyone else, am I right? We are professionals. Professional podcasters. We've been doing podcasting for how many years now? I have forgotten.
Yeah,
Right.
I've forgotten as well.
Right.
Right.
So the film received positive reviews, but it was a box office disappointment. How much of a disappointment it was? I honestly have no clue. I could not find the precise data as to how much money was spent and how much money was not returned.
I dread to think what was the financial flop as it was.
It
Because-
really worries me that there is no available data about it, or at least no data that I was able to find. We were able to easily get the very, very sad numbers for Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure. Cheers.
Yeah.
Glug, 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 glug. It's too bad you don't have a bottle of cider with you.
Yeah, I know. I drank it on Christmas. Well, actually, New Year's, actually.
You liar, you are always drinking cider.
No, I do not always drink. I'm not an alcoholic, as most people would assume.
I mean, it's cider. Barely qualifies as alcohol, honestly. And I should know that. I've tasted it. Your double-strength orange juice was far stronger than that.
Oh boy, that stuff.
Yes, good
I actually,
times.
you know, when I actually looked into the film's development history, it had me intrigued. Basically, more of the fallout of the making of this film, because a lot of things went down.
Yes, a lot of juicy backstage drama indeed.
This film was co-written by Chuck Jones along with his wife, Dorothy, I believe her name was.
Yes, judging by the way the information I've acquired puts it, Dorothy was the main driving force, whereas Chuck Jones joined her in the effort and ended up producing the film. Which
Yeah.
is something that he was not supposed to be doing. No, 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 no.
Yeah, because apparently Warner Brothers had a very strict contract with him that he could not work with any other studio, and yet he breached that contract, so they fired him after the film was finished.
Yes, and what's really funny about this is that the film was actually being released under the Warner Bros. Banner. So there was no way they wouldn't learn of this. The name of Chuck Jones is in the title credits.
I wonder how long it took them. Did they find out, like, in months or half a year, the production? Or was it, like, near the end? Like, they just realized, hey, there's a Chuck Jones in this. Wait, isn't he working for us?
Wait, is it another Chuck Jones that we don't know about? Maybe it is his evil twin, Chuckary
And then-
Jones.
And then they sent a spy in to spy on the production. And then they realized the truth. Ah!
Aha, it was Chuck Jones all along. He betrayed us. We shall fire him. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall to spy on that conversation. It must have been quite something. But anyway,
Yeah.
Chuck Jones being fired from Warner Bros. At that very specific moment in time was a blessing in disguise, because he would go on to found his own production studio, Sib Tower 12, and he would get his old unit from the now closed up Termit Terrace studio under Warner Bros. To work under
Yeah.
him. So the whole gang is reunited and they are making Tom and Jerry cartoons, as well as Dr. Seuss animated specials for the television.
The interesting thing about this is that this was actually also the catalyst for the UPA, the animation studio, to start its downfall.
It's surprising that UPA was able to exist for as long as it did, considering both its origins and its philosophies, so to speak.
Yeah.
I will delve more profoundly into the history of UPA at another time, as I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to watch a few of their works somewhere down the line. Should we actually turn this podcast into a consistent affair? Because it is actually my intention to do so. Spoilers, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, Gay Paree. You know,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, this
you know,
film.
my friend. I have to imagine coming across this film without knowing anything about it, without having any picture for context, without knowing the period of time in which it was made. You just see the logo that says Gay Paree.
Yeah.
What exactly is going on in your brain as you read those words? That's what I would like to know.
Sadly, I cannot answer that question because with my experience with this film, I've actually watched this film a few times when I was a kid. So I actually, well, the weird thing about it is I've not watched this for many years, for like 2 decades now. I remembered it, what it looked like, but I never remembered the story to it at all.
It's impossible to forget how this film looks like, because being a UPA production, and given the people, the talent involved in it, this film is nothing but striking in its aesthetics and style. And we'll get the chance to properly address that in a moment. But first of all, I would like to segue into a bit of research on the side that I have done tangentially to this film.
Right.
Right, so the word gay arrived in the English language during the 12th century from Old French gaï, most likely deriving ultimately from a Germanic source. In English, the word's primary meaning was joyful, carefree, bright and showy, and the word was very commonly used with this meaning in speech and literature. For example, the optimistic 1890s, which is where the film in question takes place, are still often referred to as the gay 90s. The title of the 1938 French ballet Gaieté Parisienne, Parisian Gaiety, which became the 1941 Warner Brothers movie The Gay Parisian, also illustrates this connotation. It was apparently not until the 20th century that the word began to be used to mean specifically homosexual, although it had earlier acquired sexual connotations. The derived abstract noun, gaiety, remains largely free of sexual connotations and has, in the past, been used in the names of places of entertainment. For example, W.B. Yeats heard Oscar Wilde lecture at the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. So, where am I going with this? Because I am going somewhere with this.
Yes, where is this destination of this?
Before doing my research, which is to say, before I looked up at Wikipedia, that's the extent of my research in that regard, but to my credit and to the credit of this Wikipedia article, it is very well informed. I used to think that the evolution of the meaning of the word, this three-lettered word gay, was a lot more straightforward than what it actually was. It used to mean, at the time, happy, optimistic, exuberant, showy about your happiness. It wasn't until the 1960s in which some homosexual men started to apply the word to what they were. And it wasn't up until the 1970s that the queer community pretty much pushed for this word to become their own representative. Incidentally, it was also around the same time that the word gay also acquired a pejorative negative connotation, as the well-known negative meaning of the word refers to unmanly and lame, and sadly it is still used to this very day in that specific connotation by angry online gamers, I suppose. At least it used to be up until very recently that was a trend. As it turns out, there is far more to this word than I initially surmised, because it turns out that its meaning has been fluctuating over the course of centuries depending on its context. And isn't language such a wonderful thing, then?
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
For example, I have another extract here from the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
The word may have started to acquire associations of immorality as early as the 14th century. By the late 17th century, it had acquired the specific meaning of addicted to pleasures and dissipations, an extension of its primary meaning of carefree, implying uninhibited by moral constraints. A gay woman was a prostitute, a gay man a womanizer, and a gay house a brothel.
Okay.
The use of gay to mean homosexual was often an extension of its application to prostitution. A gay boy was a young man or boy serving male clients. So this is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Around the 17th century and even before that, the word gay was already being associated with what society at large would consider depravity. So an heterosexual prostitute woman would be considered a gay woman. A gay boy would be a young man doing sexual favors to older men.
Okay.
It was covering a lot of ground and all in a negative light. If you think about it, the word gay pretty much began as a slur for a whole demographic of people. Several demographics, in fact. Sex workers as well as homosexual and queer people.
Right.
So essentially, in the 1960s or somewhere along those lines, some homosexual men coming out as gay was them taking a word that had been historically associated with negative, pejorative, depraved things, and made it their own as a bold statement that they indeed exist, and they are proud of it. That, however, does not exactly apply to our film tonight.
No, it does not.
Again, this is a film from 1962, and it takes place around the time of the gay 90s, which I mentioned already. They were pretty much the late 1890s.
Yeah.
In fact, we are supposed to be right about the turn of the 20th century. So we are sandwiched in between the gay 90s and La Belle Époque, that whole decade of human history of frivolous art and technological progress, when we all thought that the new century was going to be so gay, Devar, so happy.
Yes.
So
Everybody
magnificent.
be gay.
Everybody gay now. But then we experienced the rude wake-up call that was the Great War, which was the result of a series of political upheaval and tension going on behind the scenes. So suddenly, the 20th century was not so gay anymore.
No.
It was definitely not gay. Not for a very long time, in fact. 20th century was a terrible period to be gay. In both senses of the word, mind you.
Yeah.
Right. So in a way, I think that's an interesting parallel with the film Gay Purr-ee as well. Because given the time period in which it was made, it must have been the last, or at least one of the last films to ever use the word gay in their titles, for obvious reasons. And also, well, we were just a few years away from the once celebrated genre of the big Hollywood musical to meet its atrocious, ghastly end. So yes, much like the gay 90s were accidentally foreshadowing a much darker period of human history, Gay Paree happens in a period of time in which we were about to really get tired of the big Hollywood musical. And I can see why, honestly.
Yeah.
I can definitely see why. It's not gay. Not gay at all. Not gay at all.
Not gay enough. Just like Paree.
Ah, Paree. Gay.
Paree.
Wonderful, beautiful, magnificent Paree. That's how the film starts, by the way.
Yes, ignore all the people who suffer from psychological problems upon seeing Francis not as romantic as they thought it was.
Right, so back on track. I thought that was an interesting deviation from our main topic, mostly because I want to contextualize all the awful gay jokes that we have made so far, and we are going to continue making during this entire review, into a more intellectually fulfilling light.
I'll try not to, personally, but...
I mean, it's there, how could you not? Maybe if you're a better person, I guess.
Well, it's more like... there's only 2 points where they actually say the word gay.
Actually, I think they say gay all the time in that film.
Really? I could have sworn it was twice.
They say it so many times in songs, characters colloquially exchanging dialogues. The narrator at the beginning, they say gay a heck of a lot of times.
Yeah.
They do. So we mentioned the star of the film, Judy Garland. We mentioned the head writers of the film, which are the Jones.
Yes.
We did not mention who directed this film, and this is where it gets interesting for me personally. The director of this film is Abe Levito. Yes, our good friend Abe Levito.
Yes.
Are you having Raggedy Ann and Andy a musical adventure flashbacks yet?
I'm trying not to. I'm trying to concentrate on this film right now.
No, you're going to have to, because I'm going to bring it up inevitably as I talk about Abe Levito.
Yes, I know.
Mr. Levito, as we already established that one time in which we reviewed Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure, that one, was a longtime colleague of Chuck Jones. They worked together under the Warner Bros. Banner. He was brought in to direct the film by Chuck Jones himself, I believe. He would join Chuck Jones in his Sib Tower 12 venture and direct many Tom and Jerry shorts. His last credited role actually went uncredited because his last film was supposed to be Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure. He died during the production of that one, and as you know by now, Richard Williams took over to try and finish that complete train wreck of a film that we had the misfortune of watching.
Yeah.
Abe Levito. He has this very particular quirky style of animation, the very specific way in which a character would bob their head up and down as they talk, especially if they are not looking at the camera, but they are showing their profile.
Yeah.
If you recall that crazy king from Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure.
Yes, I do.
He was also animated in that very specific way. You can tell which one were the parts that Abe worked on personally. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention all the wonderful, talented animators that also worked on Gay Purr-ee, that brought Gay Purr-ee to artistically fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Of all these people, and they are many as always, the one that really stands out to me is Irv Spence. Irv Spence is a name that always pops up whenever I'm watching a Tom and Jerry cartoon or a Warner Brothers cartoon or anything in between.
Yeah.
He's truly a veteran of his craft, and there are plenty more names that would deserve recognition right now, but I don't have the list under my eyes and I cannot remember them by memory. So we should actually start off talking about this film properly, what happens in it and what's it about. Right?
Yeah. Okay, so the summary of this film. It's about a male and female cat that make terrible decisions despite, saying why it's a bad decision, but then go ahead and make the bad decisions, and everything works out in the end.
Well, in other words, it's a typical period romance from the 19th century. There are a million of period romances that are structured in this exact same way. The two leads start off lovey-dovey, then something happens, they are driven apart, and one is constantly chasing the other, but they would only reunite at the end of the film in time for the climax, which means that aside from the beginning and the end, these two had absolutely no on-screen chemistry to speak of, so we, the audience, have no reason to be invested in said romance when it happens. Great decision making.
I mean, Robespierre is as much invested in their romance.
Oh, Robespierre.
Yeah,
okay,
Robespierre.
explain this to me. Explain this to me. Almost every single character in this film, and they are all cats, by the way. In case it wasn't obvious, this is a film starring cartoon cats being gay.
Not good, yeah, be happy.
Yes, being 1962 gay. Mind you. In case the pun of the title didn't give it away, because the city of Paree and cats, so Purr-ee, you know?
Yes.
It makes more sense if you actually read it out loud.
Yes.
But anyway, yes, so explain this to me, as I was saying.
Yeah.
Every character has a odious, on-the-nose cat pun for a name. You have the main protagonist, Meowset.
Musette.
I think they say Meowset in the film.
To me, they said Musette.
Agree to disagree.
Yes. So
Okay.
let's continue.
Then there is
Jean-Tom.
Jean-Tom! Jean-Tom!
Jean-Tom!
Jean-Tom! Jean-Tom! And
Let's
then
see.
you have the villain, Meow-Reese.
Reese.
The
What a name.
deliciously evil, mustache-twirling villain who gets compared to the literal devil in his own villainous song. How splendid. The master
Indeed.
of the appearing and disappearing mustache, by the way. Yes, there was that very funny animation error at some point. Have you noticed it? How could you not?
There's a couple like that. For a couple of frames, Musette misses her nose.
Yes. Well, it's not as obvious as Meow-Reese missing literally one half of his facial hair, which are really whiskers fashioned as an evil twirly mustache. So anyway,
Yes.
you have Meow-Reese, Musette, Jean-Tom, and whomever was the mistress cat there. Ruben Schott, I believe. Miss Ruben Schott. I have my own notes right beneath my eyes. So
Okay.
anyway, all these characters, they have French names. Well, they have cat pan French names, right?
Yeah.
So why does Robespierre have a normal name?
I actually do not have a clue about that one. Because I would have thought I would have found something about why his name was Robespierre.
No,
but-
Robespierre was the name of that one famous Frenchman that tried to lead France right after the French Revolution and then was beheaded.
I wonder if that has anything to do with this film.
Well, it definitely makes me want him to be beheaded, so I guess there is that. Yes, Robespierre is the typical comic relief sidekick. He is the Tails to Jean-Tom Sonic, if you will.
Yeah. And
But
he's
unlike Tails, he's completely useless and annoying.
he's very useless in the film, yeah. And his whole motivation in the film is, well, in the first part of the film anyway, is he wants John Tom to pay attention to him more and, you know, play games, essentially, like go chase mice.
Yes, I guess cats before felines.
Mm-hmm.
Bros before felines.
Yeah, that's what I said, actually, as a joke.
Yes, we are not going to retell the story of this film point by point. We'll most likely just jump around to point out some of the more interesting moments. Because the narrative is otherwise very straightforward.
It's very bland as well, and not very.
Yes, that's what I meant
interesting.
by straightforward. I was trying to be euphemistical about it, but it is an extremely bland period romance with a very obvious resolution, a very, very tragically obvious bad guy, and very tragically obvious bad decisions made primarily by our main heroine, which spends the majority of the film being in distress and not very gay at all.
Yeah.
Yes. It never gets old.
Yeah. So yeah, this film. Shall we actually talk about how it looks overall? Actually,
Yes, we'll get to that. But first, let's
Yeah.
talk about the music in this film.
forgettable.
Yes, extremely. It
I actually
shares
do-
a commonality with Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure, other than Abe Levito working in it, in that it is a very bad musical, because it uses its songs mostly to pad out the length of said film, which you can tell from the very moment it starts, from the very moment you witness those overly long title credits, that it's going to struggle to reach that feature length of 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And sadly, that was exactly the case.
Yeah. It's just that I swear that every song I heard in that film, I didn't remember a single one, fully. I only remember lines, like 1 or 2 lines from a song or two, like "The Money Cat Man Can" or something.
The Money Cat Can, it's a good song, but mostly because it's blatantly ripping off the Candyman can.
That's what I was thinking. It seemed like it was ripping it off, but I didn't want to say just in case I...
Well, it's not so much as a rip-off as it is an homage. The song is still pretty solid in its own right, but it's really the visuals who make it grand. But as a song, in its specific context, is completely worthless, much like most of the songs in this film. Like I said, they are blatantly padding out for time. Hey, get this! Meowset and the villain, Meow-Reese, are traveling through Paree in a coach. They see a couple of humans, a couple of silhouetted humans smooching. You know what would be a good idea right now? Let's have a song about smooching!
Yeah, I mean, that's great. How did it go again?
I don't know, but apparently there is a song about smooching. And
Oh,
it
that's
doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't contribute to anything having to do with the story or the characters. It's a song that's there for the sake of being there. Speaking of which, hey, the villain Meow-Reese has ensnared the good guys, Jean-Tom and Robespierre. He brings them to a bar, which is right beside Le Moulin Rouge, by the way, because it's France, it's Paris, it's the gay 90s. Of course there's the Moulin Rouge. Okay,
Yes.
He brings them to a bar, to a Mel Blanc sounding bartender who does not sound French at all. He's from New York, obviously.
Yeah.
He gets them to drink, and let's now have a song about getting drunk.
And bubbles.
Bubbles, bubbles,
Bubbles.
bubbles, bubbles. It's the worst song in the film, but it's the only
Yeah.
one I bother to remember because it is so insane. Jean-Tom and Robespierre just start singing about bubbles. Jean-Tom with his actually good voice, and Robespierre with his please
Boys.
don't ever sing again voice. Yes, get it all out.
Yeah. So
Oh.
yeah, none of these songs really stuck with me, and I'm a bit of a music snob, as you know.
I know. Listen, there is a reason why the big Hollywood musical would die in the 60s. The demand for it was de-escalating quite obviously. And most of these musicals really struggled to actually have an excuse to have songs in it. A good musical would use its songs to further the plot along or introduce a character, or develop said characters, they would contribute to the pacing of the film. They wouldn't detract from it. They wouldn't exist for the sole purpose of padding it out.
Yeah.
Raggedy Ann and Andy, A Musical Adventure, cheers, was much, much, much worse than that. But still, I have no patience for that sort of venture anymore. And make no mistake, this is a very beautiful looking film. It is a very beautifully striking, artistically fulfilling film, and a lot of those songs are accompanied by beautiful visuals. But again, to make an animated musical interesting, you would have to have fully animated characters doing what fully animated characters do during a song. There is a reason why Disney continued doing musicals in their animated features, because they had both the budget and the talent to pull off a more complex choreographed sequence, a more interesting and dynamic animation sequence to accompany their songs. This is a UPA production, which means they have all the best intentions in the world, they have all the best artists imaginable, but they don't really do all that much in terms of a dynamic animation. The animation itself, in fact, is extremely limited, as it is a style that they pretty much invented.
Yeah.
So there is that. So we are left with long stretches of songs with cute, beautiful, vibrant imagery, and they are so slow, and they go on forever. On the other hand, you have the Money Cat song, which was brilliant.
Now that you mention it, the Money Cat song is probably the only part of the film that actually doesn't just show imagery, but it just shows the characters.
Yes, I really do like those silhouetted,
Black
shadowy cats. Honestly, I don't know if they are just shrouded in darkness constantly, or if they really look like that. They share a lot of well-lit scenes with their boss, Meow Reese. They are his henchmen, after all, and they are still shrouded in shadows and darkness. Honestly, they are the best designed characters in the film, and they are just silhouettes. It's the simplicity and strength of character design at its finest with those cat henchmen.
Yeah, I really like the design as well myself, of those henchmen.
Which are called the Mellow Men. So that song, while completely pointless for a variety of reasons, is a very well choreographed song because it shows off the Mellow Men doing their Mellow Man things. Singing, backup singing, coming out of rooftops, showcasing a bit more of dynamic animation that a more traditionally designed character would not be able to do unless, you have a better budget. Which is always the problem with a UPA production. They found many ways to get around their limits. All of their works, they are a testament of their talent and virtuosismo, if you will.
Yeah.
Because let's not mince words. This film was very much made for the benefit of the artists who worked on it.
It definitely feels that way, because I tried looking online to see if there was anything about the development of the film, like its reason for existing. I have not found any evidence of any reasoning of why it exists other than existence itself. So I can only theorize it's because they really wanted to do a French-style film.
I think a lot of people in UPA are big fans of that very specific period of French modern art, specifically French Impressionism, and they wanted to do a film basically for the purpose of showcasing how good they are in emulating the style of many great artists of the period. Cézanne or Toulouse-Lautrec, who was famous for making posters of Le Moulin Rouge. And what about young Pablo Picasso, which was yet to become an entity at the time? Ah, Pointillism. Mwah. And what about that Vincent van Gogh guy? He came to Paris to become someone. He's famous for his temperament, you know?
Yeah, that scene where basically Maurice was just listing off artists, you know,
Yes.
and basically what they did.
I love this because this is the part in which the film is basically doing my homework for me.
Yeah.
I was going to do some research to find out exactly what all the inspirations for the beautiful, gorgeous, hand-drawn and painted backgrounds that compose this film were. I could tell on our first look that the countryside by which the film starts was inspired by Van Gogh paintings. I could tell there was a lot of direct inspiration from the likes of Monet and Cézanne and Modigliani by the very specific styles they use throughout this film, which are all gorgeous and beautiful to look at. But as it turns out, I don't need to do my research because the makers of the film thought it was a great idea to completely derail the plot, to just have this one long sequence of the villain Maurice listing out loud all the painters that he apparently had hired to make portraits of Meowsette.
Yeah, about that.
There is a lot to be said about that, honestly. There is a lot to unpack just by that sentence alone. But in the middle of the film, we have this long sequence of just Maurice listing off painters that made pictures of Meowsette.
And their styles and such.
In their style and such. And in its own right, it is a magnificent, truly extraordinaire and gay sequence all around. I loved it on its own, but in the context of a film with a story and a narrative, it's such a bizarre moment.
It's just quite jarring to basically be involved in a romance musical film only to get then dragged into, hey, these are the inspirations we took for this film. Because it's certainly not a history lesson, because certain artists were not around in that time period, and Picasso...
Yes, I noted that as well. Pablo Picasso was yet to start even his blue period in the turn of the century, let alone start Cubism. So he could not have painted Meowsette in a cubistic style.
So either Maurice is lying through his teeth to his client, or the filmmakers did not do their history lesson properly.
Or maybe they just were such big nerds for the gay 90s and La Belle Époque, art-wise, that they didn't care about historical accuracy. I can get behind it. But yes, the inclusion of Pablo Picasso really throws me to a loop in that whole sequence. And the funny part is that Picasso was the last artist mentioned in that whole sequence, after Cézanne and Monet and Modigliani and Van Gogh and Pointillism.
And the guy who just uses tubes to paint with rather than a brush.
Yes, it's a very good sequence in its own right, but it makes little to no sense in the context of a film. Also, maybe if you love these artists, don't have the bad guy of the film praising their craft. You know?
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
Having the bad guy recommend their wonderful work. By the way, a quick aside here. This is to do with the artist, but it's a completely different thing. There's an Easter egg where the painter of the Moulin Rouge can be seen drawing in a bar.
Oh, you mean Toulouse-Lautrec?
Yeah, when the camera pans, from the can-can cat dancers, you can see a guy, he's apparently drinking while drawing, and that's supposed to be the guy who did the Moulin Rouge posters.
Again, Toulouse-Lautrec.
Yeah, Toulouse-Lautrec.
Toulouse-Lautrec, famous for his posters of Le Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, so that's a very weird Easter egg I ended up finding out from my research.
It's a very good film in terms of the backgrounds, really. For its backgrounds, for the level of craftsmanship and dedication and artistry showcased in the making of said backgrounds. And since they don't have many actually animated characters in this film, they tried and partially failed to breathe in life into an otherwise deserted Paree by drawing people in the background as well, as if they were part of the portrait that is Gay Paree.
Yeah. I like the backgrounds myself as well. They're very varied, but yet have their own distinct style that obviously...
Well, obviously they have their own distinct style. They are based off Cézanne and Monet and Modigliani and Pablo Picasso.
But it also kind of helps in, in dividing the areas, so to speak. So the countryside is in one style, while the city of Paree is in another style.
Yes. The countryside has completely different colors and a different trait, inspired very specifically by the countryside paintings of Van Gogh. When you get to the city instead, it is darker with muted colors. It is a constant nightlife.
You'd think from the sounds of this, you think that would kind of clash, but it doesn't. It's like, it strangely finds that right balance of using the right style to give a feel of the atmosphere of the place that they want to give.
Yes, indeed. It's very good to look at. Unfortunately, the clash occurs whenever the traditionally animated cartoon characters interact with the environment, which is to say, they are not part of the environment in the slightest. In fact, in some specific cases, they don't even leave a shadow where they are walking. These characters openly clash with the stylistic choice of the background. They stand out in the worst possible way. They feel like cartoons drawn over a painting, which they literally are, but you're not supposed to notice that.
The best I could describe it as, it's like one of those sticker books that you own, where basically you can make a diorama with stickers.
Yes,
and,
they
the characters
don't look well.
The characters would just not merge with the scene well.
It is very unfortunate. Gay Paree is an artistically interesting and rich film, but unfortunately it is not an artistically cohesive film because of this reason.
Yeah, sadly. I want to like this film mostly because of all the people involved in it, the sheer talent and the scope of it, the very specific, very appropriate artistic direction of it. But there's no denying that this film exists primarily for the benefit of whomever made it, rather than a engaged audience, much like Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure, existed for the benefit of its animators. And you know what? Conceptually, I don't have anything against that. No.
I do like the old-fashioned idea of the artiste that makes his works of art mostly for himself, to express himself, express his own views on the world and how they perceive it. And then these plebeians might like it or not, I don't care. I am just painting and creating art from the height of my ivory tower.
I'm just doing what I will do.
Okay, there is a valid reason why the image of the artiste and the auteur has died a horrible death. But still, this was one of the last decades in human film history in which this was possible, because after a certain period of time, nothing could ever be made that did not have specific audience catering in mind.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
And honestly, given how much of a failure these films were at the box office, I can understand it. Art and business have been coexisting for as long as there was art and there was a marketing for art around it.
Yeah.
It's a necessary coexistence, and unfortunately, in the worst case scenarios, freedom of individual expression has to give way to actual economic returns. Otherwise, we cannot continue making art.
No, yeah.
It's a sad truth of the world, one of the many sad truths of the world, that all those dreamers and bohemians and the French Impressionist painters during the gay 90s would eventually realize.
Yeah.
As the dream comes to an end and we are all awakened by the horror of war.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a downer. So anyway, I want to talk a bit more about the characters themselves and what they do in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Because I do realize we've been jumping up and down during this entire review, mostly because we refuse to do a point-by-point recap.
Yeah,
for our own sanity, mostly. But again, it's a very simple story. A very simple story indeed. Meowsette is fed up with the country life. She dreams of becoming a gay Parisian and a truly refined feline that would get champagne and champignon and chanticleer or whatever that was.
Yeah, you know that scene where basically she was saying to Jean-Tom and Robespierre about how she wants to be a feline, and they're all like, a fee, what? It's like as if she just came out and said, I want to be this gender or this
Yes, I thought of that as well.
And they're reacting like a bunch
it is titled Gay Paree. Also, I am pretty sure that many people, upon looking at the Judy Garland cat character, they might have turned into gay furries.
How long you been sitting that joke for?
For way too long.
Oh, God.
I hope it was worth it. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
So anyway, she basically embarks into her own journey to become a gay Parisian, if you will. And the reason for that, the inciting incident, was caused by Robespierre himself. He is useless throughout this entire film, except when he causes the inciting incident. He basically tells her, and then why don't you go to Paree? And you know what? She does that.
Yes, and she thanks Robespierre.
Yes, and all that. So of course, Mr. Jean-Tom has to go after her.
Yeah.
Literally chasing the train on the railroad.
Yeah, it's like, thanks Robespierre, you're a best friend.
Yes. Is there much to say about these characters aside from the actions that they take throughout this film?
Not really.
I know that Jean-Tom is a master mouser, as in a top-notch catcher of mice.
Yeah,
there is this cute little gag whenever he spots a mouse.
He would get this little reticle in his eye that suddenly aims at the mouse. Then he straightens his back, fuse lits in his tail, flying like a rocket after it gets...
It's prey, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so at some point, the bad guy, Meow Reese, shanghais both Robespierre and Jean-Tom to Alaska after the Bubble song.
Yes.
And his mouser abilities allowed him to find gold in Alaska as he was catching a mouse.
Yes.
So they become rich and they go back to Paree in time for the climax.
Yes, and plus he gets on the paper as being the richest cat for some reason.
This is weird because during that time, those two were alongside a human character we never see the face of.
He also apparently got shanghaied as well, apparently.
Whatever that means in this context, because I thought they were going to be sold as slaves, basically. But upon arriving in Alaska, they were free.
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense with an earlier scene, because you see, the reason why they were shanghaied to begin with was because Meow Reese happened to see Jean Tom's performance as a Mouser.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to try to make a buck out of him at the Mouser Racers or something along those lines. Something having to do with his ability to catch mice. Instead, he gets shanghaied into this ship to work on this ship up until he gets to Alaska, and then he goes gold hunting with this newfound human friend.
Yeah.
But this is only one of the many bit of inconsistencies in this film.
That's
Back to the villain song, the Money Cat Can. So this was weird, because the motivations for the villain from Meow Reese is, what else? Money. Money. We've got to have money.
Yeah, pretty much. That's all his character is about. It's all about getting money. And this is where Musette comes in as his big plan, is to try and basically sell Musette as a mail order bride.
Yes, to a rich man or cat from Pittsburgh named Mr.
Fit Henry or something.
Fat. He's fat. I guess that's the joke.
That is the joke.
I cannot say it. I cannot say his name.
Okay, there's two funny things about this. Because he's always supposed to be fat, because Musette, when he's shown a picture of him, she mentions he's a fat oaf, and yet the audience never gets to see him.
Yes, the mysterious entity known as Mr.
Yeah. On the other side, I actually like how Meow Reese writes his letters and checks with his finger, and he gets ink automatically for some reason out of his nail.
How exactly does he intend to make money out of this mail order bride? How does cat society work in this world alongside human society?
Never mind that.
Do mind that, because when he shanghaied Robespierre and Jean Tom to Alaska, he must have sold them to humans, right?
Yeah, I mean, but, I'm more concerned with, right? You know that he kept writing those letters to Mr. Fitz, and he put it in a mailbox that any human would go. Does this mean the humans know to deliver letters to cats?
Does that mean that Mr. F is actually human and a furry?
Do they have like a secret post cat who comes along with the human to take the mail for the cats?
Do they have a personalized mailbox, which is the size of cats, much like the mice in The Great Mouse Detective, and a miniaturized version of everything that the humans had? Speaking of miniaturized versions of what humans have, what about that... What about Miss Robin Schott's Center for Young Feline, or whatever it was, that just happened to be beside the human version of that very shop?
I know, right? This is
also...
It's so weird, this world that we're introduced to. There's so many questions that never get answered.
You really are not supposed to ask these questions. You are supposed to be swept away into this beautiful, timeless period romance in beautiful Paree and all that. But since the film is not doing a great job in holding our attention, and consequently our suspension of disbelief, we inevitably start up being pedantic about everything.
I can't help but question everything I see. I'm sorry.
It is a testament of the failings of the film, really, because it's not holding our attention. So all of the details on the side about the narrative, they become compounded upon our ever so pressed suspension of disbelief. And speaking of which, Mel Blanc, famous voice actor Mel Blanc, does a few extra voices in this film.
Yeah.
Why do all of his characters, including that one random bulldog and the bartender at the feline version of Moulin Rouge, are New York sounding? We are in Paree, for crying out loud.
I mean, I did hear him try and put a French accent on as the carriage driver, but it was so thick, the New York accent, that
Yes.
that it didn't sound good.
Not at all. Also, speaking of which, most characters in the cast, including the villain Maurice, they have a very on-the-nose French accent. And yet, the protagonists do not.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
I
Very
mean,
inconsistent.
They did not choose Judy Garland as the lead actress and singer for this film to have her sound like a fake French. No, they pretty much wanted her for her incredible voice and talent. And make no mistake, her voice when she sings is absolutely house-breaking. It is so powerful, and she has tons of range. Unfortunately, the songs themselves do not do her justice.
Did I forget to mention that the songs were worked on by two people who worked on The Wizard of Oz with her, and she suggested them?
Yes, I think that was a good decision at the time.
Yeah. But this was the last thing they worked on, and considering most of their songs are forgettable...
Yes, also considering this must have been one of the last, if not the last, performance by Judy Garland. She would pass away a few years down the line.
Yeah.
Still in the same decade. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, this film... Oh, speaking again of Maurice, this is a point I tried to make a few minutes ago. Okay. Speaking of all the holes we are finding in this text.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that his Moneycat song, in which he explains his reasons to be evil, as he literally puts it,
yes,
is to make money? Isn't it weird that we have that song even before we are actually explained what exactly does he intend to do with Meowsette in order to make money?
Yeah, true.
They have those scenes out of order. They should have shown him planning to send Meowsette as a male bride for Mr. in Pittsburgh. You should have had that scene before the Moneycat song.
Yeah, it would have made more sense, yeah. Instead, they just basically went, hey, I love money. Okay, what's your plan then? I love money, I love money. Okay, you're singing about you love money.
In fact, let me recount his scenes up to the reveal of his evil intentions since his first appearance.
Yeah.
So Meowsette arrives in Paree as a clandestine in a train, and even before she puts her paw off the train, Maurice is literally already inside the wagon she's in to ensnare her. Wow! Yeah. What was he doing in that train? That baffles me.
That is baffling, yeah. And I mean, I also like how he's just there and he goes like, oh, that was such a lovely song, sort of thing.
It would have made sense if she were to travel Paree, at least take a couple of steps outside of the bloody station before this guy shows up to use her for his own profit. But no, she doesn't even get off the train that he is already inside the wagon, ready to exploit her.
Yeah, pretty much. Allow me to show you around Paris. Maybe even get you to learn how to be a true feline from my sister.
A true gay Parisian. So he takes her immediately to his quote-unquote sister, which is the aforementioned Miss Rubenstadt. Madame Rubenstadt. That's her name. In her own feline-making brothel? Okay, listen. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought he was going to make her into a strip dancer at the Moulin Rouge. It's the gay 90s. It's Paree. She's a naive young girl from the country. He's an evil, mustache-twirling bad guy. She's going to end up working at the Moulin Rouge as a dancer, isn't she? That's what's going to happen. She's going to be a high-class prostitute, essentially. But no, then they throw me for a loop because they have the money-making cat song, and then, after a long while, we finally see what he's up to, and he's going to send her as a male bride to this mysterious Mr. over in Pittsburgh. So essentially, he brought Meowsette to his quote-unquote sister to train her to be a high-class mail-order bride in order to suit the needs of some rich guy from Pittsburgh.
You know, there's another thing I really like in that one scene when Musette first meets Meowreese. As soon as he offers, she's like, "Oh, I shouldn't be accepting from strangers," sort of thing. And he convinces her to go with him anyway.
Well, if I tell you what my name is, I will no longer be a stranger. Life hack.
It's like one of those life lessons, and yet she ignores it completely just to make this terrible decision so the film can continue.
I am going to be a refined feline in Paree. I will get champagne and champignon and
do or something.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way we are describing it, it seems like there is a lot happening, but truthfully, almost nothing happens for 90 minutes. Robespierre and Jean-Tom get to Paris, they almost find immediately the place she's in, but they get derailed for the next 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so, and they somehow end up in Alaska after an unfortunate encounter with Meowreese, but they come back from Alaska rich just in time for the climax, and this kills me right here because Meowreese has successfully ensnared Meowsette after she managed to escape from him because he was dumb enough to reveal what his plan was to her.
Yeah.
And everything, it's a whole scene of nothing. But anyway, he's on the train to leave the capital with Meowsette trapped in a box being a Schrödinger cat, by all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And this scene kills me because Jean-Tom has just missed the train, the villain is laughing on his face, and then Jean-Tom says, "Wait, maybe if I imagine..." He thinks Meowreese has a giant ugly mouse, activates his Mouser powers.
Yes, and he comes in like Superman.
Super Cat. He gets into the train and they have a cartoon fight, including a very specific gag that would be reprised in Chuck Jones's Tom and Jerry cartoons. The one having to do with the door slamming on characters. The door of the wagon, in this sense. It's a very nicely done scene. So much like the rest of the film, the climax is also overly prolonged.
Yeah, it's a prolonged cat fight.
So eventually, Jean-Tom beats up Meowreese, and he gets sent to Mr. in the box.
Robespierre actually gave the idea to Jean-Tom to do that as well.
Robespierre actually ruins the gag because he keeps pointing out what the gag is.
Yeah, even though both Jean-Tom and Robespierre would not know anything about the plan or about what's going on.
Well, I guess they did it because it seemed like a fine and fun idea at the time. Cut to a couple of months later, we celebrate the marriage of Meowreese and Mr. in Pittsburgh. No, we don't actually cut to that, sadly, but I like to imagine that's when we get to the gay part of Gay Paree.
There was one detail I thought was interesting, but yet at the same time not, because it's like, at the beginning of the film, Jean-Tom is like singing about Musette and how much he loves her and such, and then he bumps into her, and he says, "Oh gosh, Musette, I can't sing right in front of you," and then at the end of the film, he's singing right in front of her, and it's like, where's the middle to all this?
It seemed like these characters were meant to have a proper arc and development, but they really didn't. I guess we are supposed to buy that there was one and just be done with it.
Well,
Speaking of being done with it, this is the end of the film in which Miocet and Gentom are united, and instead of going back to the country, because that seemed like the arc that was established at the very beginning, they stay in Paree, being rich and gay, I suppose.
And singing to each other.
And singing about how gay and rich they are. Let us be gay!
Gentom, Gentom.
Bubbles!
Bubbles.
Bubbles. So there is a lot about this film that we have not even bothered mentioning. We mostly discussed and analyzed the more interesting moments, the more striking moments that this film had to offer in order to contextualize our feelings and general overview of it.
Yeah.
I would recommend people to watch this film, mostly because it is a peculiar novelty.
Yeah.
In its own right. It is not a very good film that can stand on its own, but as a testament to art, to passion for art, there are very few films that can stand on such a pedestal. In that sense, Gay Paree, poorly aged title and everything, is a very, very wholesome portrait, see what it there, of what the people making this film liked, the artists that inspired them, and everything in between. It's not a good musical, it's not a good film, it doesn't have a solid structure, it's awfully padded, it's too long, honestly, it should have been 30 minutes long in order to be watchable. But it's one of those rare gems and treasures of animation history that are both easily forgotten and are also easily unique for what they bring to the table. So in that sense, I would encourage to at least check out this film, especially if you're a fan of Chuck Jones, Abe Levito, their very specific style of character design, and also if you are very big on the good old gay 90s.
I also would say that if you're an animation buff like us, then
Well, in that sense, you just have to be a completionist. If you are an animation completionist and you want to see as many films as possible, then you have to watch Gay Paree, because...
I mean...
You have to! You just have to!
Because it's not worth watching for the story or for the characters, but
or the songs,
or the songs for that matter, but at least the art direction is interesting, and if you're a fan of Chuck Jones's work, then or if you're an animation buff, then it's worth watching just for a distraction, maybe.
Or even if you're a fan of Judy Garland and her star-studded career, this is one of those films that most Judy Garland fans and historians might forget to mention.
Yeah.
So you should watch it for that as well. And I guess that's about it for our review of Gay Furries. I mean... Damn it. Okay.
Gay Paree.
Gay Paree. Ah, Paree. Gay, wonderful... Magnificent Paree.
Magnificent Paree.
And also we've got to have money.
Money. Yeah,
money.
Put that outfit on him from the Tom and Jerry.
At some point we will have to review that film.
You mean that Tom and Jerry movie?
From 1994, yes. That one film that, as a child... I hated.
I've watched that film so many times, I think I could probably review it without even watching it again.
You have a point there. I guess we'll see. But for now, this has been our deconstructive analysis and
thoughts and
comedic riffing, if you will, of Gay Paree, directed by Abe Levito, written by Dorothy and Chuck Jones, starring Judy Garland. from 1962, produced by UPA and distributed by Warner Bros. And then Chuck Jones was fired.
Yes, and did better things with his time.
Yes, Chuck Jones, who's known for his contribution to the Looney Tunes and then Tom and Jerry. Abe Levitt, who would go on to half-direct a failed project of a film.
Chuck Jones!
We are giving them a send-off, much like in the vein of that whole sequence in Gay Purr-ee.
Yes. Chuck Jones! Like John Tom.
Oh, yes, indeed. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been Madhog le Monsieur.
And I have been Devar Oxygen.
And what else can I say but let us all be gay?
Yes, let us all be gay together.
Let us all be gay together in beautiful gay Paree. Hooray!
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 And then
good
montage.
Okay, no montage. We don't have the budget. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
It's made out of bubbles.
Okay, the test recording has just started.
Hello, test recording that just started. My, how we're gonna have a gay evening today.
Let us be gay together.
Yes, let us be gay.
Let us be gay indeed. Oh boy,
gosh.
So much gayness. How gay is this film, Devar? It is so gay, isn't it?
It's so gay that it goes back to straight.
Yes, it is so straight it goes back to gay. Oh, yes, in case you were wondering, reviewing this film is pretty much an excuse to make as many gay jokes as humanly possible.
Well, you have my blessing since I'm gender blind.
You're also bisexual. I don't know how much that helps to
Well,
validate this.
Well, technically, I'm a pansexual. That means
Oh, so basically you're the mega evolution of the bisexual. Good to know. Good to know. I have a bisexual friend, and now I have a pansexual friend. If you add into the mix a I don't know how to end that joke. Okay, never mind.
So you actually know what a pansexual is?
Yes, more or less. You basically have no limits. Is that...
Yes, I rather more care for the personality of the person than I do.
Yes, I mean,
the body.
I assume that's the case because the term pansexual, you have pan in it, which I'm assuming derives from the god Pan, which is an entity usually associated with hedonism, so I have to assume it's the greatest, highest celebration of sexuality? Correct me if I am wrong.
I haven't researched that deeply into that.
You're just level 5, you need to reach level 10. Pansexual. I must thank you for this, Devar. I never had a blooper reel in one of my podcasts. Well,
okay.
Now I have one.
Oh, well, that's good for you then.
Oh boy. Too much punk sexuality in your throat right now, I see.
Oh, God.
Bubbles! Bubbles! Bubbles!
Bubble.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh.